Okay, sorry, is there sound now? Okay, one moment, please. Whoop. Okay, do we have sound now? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for listening in. I'm coming to you live from Paracas in Peru. Yes, Paracas, where the elongated skulls are from. The major cemetery is ancient cemetery is about a 25-minute drive from where I am. And yesterday I went over once again the results of the major study of the Paracas elongated skulls that we did. It was a process that took somewhere in the region of 4 years and had to include the involvement of the Peruvian government, because what we tested were elongated skulls from the Ica Regional Museum in Peru and also the Paracas Museum of Senior Juan Navarro in Paracas. And the head of the study was a major archaeologist from the Ministry of Culture of Peru. And so just to recap what the results were, all Native American people, 100% full-blooded, who lived in Peru in the past and even to the present day, are of 4 specific haplogroups or haplotypes. That's the ancestry and ethnicity. And those haplogroups are A, B, C, and D. So when Nazca skulls were tested, the Nazca culture came after the Paracas and looked completely normal. Any DNA testing done on them showed that they had haplogroups A, B, C, or D. In general, B is the most prominent of these ancient people. So after the course of these 4 years and spending $100,000, because we brought crews down from the United States, who were the ones who actually did the fundraising, several trips down here. So the major cost was all of the flying and staying in hotels and this and that and whatever. In January of this year, we had a press conference in Los Angeles where we had a release of the information. And this information is available to any academic who wants to have it. It was given first to the Ministry of Culture, to our head archaeologist, and he supposedly wrote a report for the government, but it was never actually published for the public. And when I went to see him, he said he just found the results to be very strange. He didn't understand them. Because again, he expected only haplogroups A, B, C, and D, with B being the most prominent. Those are the people whose ancestors crossed over the Bering Land Bridge. And so once again, I will tell you what the results were. There were 18 skulls that were tested. One of them issued no results, and these are mitochondrial. This is maternal DNA. So we had results from 17. And only 2 of them out of 17 showed blood type B, or sorry, haplogroup B. None of them showed haplogroups A, C, or D. And the reason, again, the head archaeologist, I went to see him personally afterwards, after he had the results, and he just said, well, these results are strange. I don't understand them. But he didn't show any great interest in the fact that there were anomalies. And this is becoming typical in academia. So that's why I talk directly to you, the general public, because at least you're interested. I'm not frustrated by this process at all. I come from an academic background, and I've gotten used to the fact that academics do not like new information in general. So these are some of the results that came back. And again, this should change the course of history, but I'll allow you, and I'm hoping that you will share this information with others so that you can see. And I'll actually, if you want to, you can take a screenshot of the results, and I'm going to list what some of them are. U2E1, H1 and H, K, H2A, J1B1, and then two that were B, as in B4, H, R, and H. So those are not ancestries that are ancient, that are indigenous to Peru whatsoever. So what's the commonality? When you look up on the internet where these different haplogroups are located, you see in general Eastern Europe and into Eurasia. You have some examples going into Scandinavia, but when you look for the commonality, what you find is the area of Eurasia is where you find all of these haplogroups. And I'm talking more specifically the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and Crimea. So that means since the Paracas only existed on the coast between 3,000 and 2,000 years ago, that around 3,000 years ago, ancient ancestors arrived on the coast of Peru many, many hundreds of years before the Spanish conquistadors, and they've had to have migrated from the Eurasia area. So that is history making. That's mind-boggling. Again, please, if you know any academics, any anthropologists or archaeologists who would like the information, please tell them to either contact me or get my book, Beyond the Black Sea, which is on Amazon in both paperback and ebook formats. It's pretty cheap. It's like $4 for the ebook and $10 for the paperback, and that has all of the. It's the book I wrote about the Paracas people, the entire history. So, again, since yesterday's chat was very successful, many thousands of people have watched that video, which I'm quite blown away by, very thankful for. I thought, well, since the last results came out in January, maybe it's time for a GoFundMe campaign where I have the general public contribute rather than bothering to go through institutional people or super rich people or whatever. And I was told by the archaeologist more than 5 times, this is a leading Peruvian archaeologist, that if I took samples from private collections, that I did not have to go through any governmental process. They were in fact not interested whatsoever. So he said, if you want a sample from a private collection, then you can go ahead. There's no problem with the government as regards that. And so since I'm in Paracas itself, there are people who are collectors here of ancient artifacts, of course, because there are thousands of ancient artifacts that you can find in this area. And so I've decided to test 2 skulls, which are in a private collection. And the owner of the private collection has allowed me to do this. Unfortunately, the skulls are very, very badly damaged. They were found smashed to pieces and had to be glued back together. But they're very curious, and I am wearing plastic bags because I don't have any gloves right now, but it doesn't honestly matter. If I handle these skulls with my hands, then I'm not going to contaminate the skull, because you take the DNA from inside, you go into the marrow, which is still present inside the skull, you drill in and you take the fresh marrow out, or if you're fortunate, you take a molar tooth. And so this whole process, rather than being $100,000, I'll be able to test 2 skulls, 2 samples from each skull for a total of about $5,000. And so with my GoFundMe campaign, which again, I'll put the link here. Oh, well, anyway, I've put the link there, and I'll do it again after I've done this little demonstration. So this is the one I showed yesterday. This is a casting. This is a casting of an original Paracas skull. And of course, you see the shape is quite anomalous. If this was cranial deformation or head binding, then the back of the skull would be flat, and it's not. It's rounded. And also, the suture, which is supposed to be here, there's absolutely no sign of it ever existing. So that again confounds medical professionals. Also, these two holes in the back of the skull here are not normal. We have them in locations like that on the front and also in the mandible. That's where blood and nerve flow comes through. So this is a genetic anomaly of the elongated skulls of Paracas. Now, again, this is not a real skull, but it's an exact casting of one. And it also has these anomalous, anomalous little bones here, which are typical of the Inca culture, which came many centuries later. So I think actually the Inca and the Paracas were related people. So now I would like to actually show you a real Paracas skull. Now, unfortunately, again, it's been very badly damaged, but just look at the shape of it. Look where the eye sockets are in relation to the forehead. Now, this was likely maybe a 3 or 4-year-old child. It has the holes in the back of the skull here. It actually does have this suture, but from this skull, what I can do is I can go into the marrow part, I can drill into the marrow, and then I can take samples of DNA from there, and they will be sent to Lakehead University, which is in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. That's one of the labs that did the earlier testing. They're by far the best laboratory to work with because they're specialists at ancient DNA. There are only 10 laboratories in the world that can do ancient DNA successfully. And so Lakehead is one of them. They've already agreed. The cost of each test will be about $1,200. So therefore, if I'm able to raise $5,000, then I'll be able to do 2 tests from each one. And then this is the other fragment of a skull. Again, there are the eye sockets. And there's the overall shape. The interesting thing about this one is that's not a break. This is a suture coming down the front of the forehead. So this one had or has one suture more than normal. And again, when medical professionals look at that, they say, well, yeah, we have that as soon as we're born, but it disappears almost immediately. This was probably a teenager. And so the fact that it has this suture line in the front of the forehead is an anomaly. And very fortunately, this one has still a molar tooth. And so the tooth is perfect for taking a DNA sample because the DNA is still inside of it, and it has been hermetically sealed by nature inside there in the pulp of the tooth for 2,000 to 3,000 years. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I'll show you once again this one. Here's the one that was likely a baby. Again, notice where the eye sockets are in relation to the overall size and shape of the head. Quite massive. Unfortunately, the lower jaw doesn't exist. Also, you see this very interesting shape to the forehead. That's not something that you can achieve with binding the skull, because binding is flattening here and in the back. And the back of the skull is totally rounded. So this individual was quite likely born this way. This is an example of one of the elongated skulls that was probably born with an elongated skull. And again, the 2 holes in the back. So I hope you are interested in joining me in doing the DNA testing. I think it's a lot better to have a number of people contribute what they can, say $5, 10, whatever dollars for it. That spreads out the cost, and that means that I'm not under the influence of one big donor, which I don't want anyway. So this is a project from one human being to you. So once again, there's the link to the GoFundMe campaign. If I'm able to raise $3,000, then I will come up with the other $2,000. And it doesn't involve any flying or anything like that, because as you can see, the actual samples are here. And then I simply send them off to Lakehead University. The DNA goes in powder form. And so that's, it's not a big deal. It goes directly from Peru to Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario. They've already agreed on a price of about $1,200 something per sample. So thank you so very much for listening to me. I'm obviously not going to be doing a live broadcast like this every day. I just happen to have downtime, and we're starting a tour up in the highlands of Peru and Cusco and Machu Picchu, etc. Starting on the 7th, the tour specializes in the elongated skulls of Peru because they're found in many locations. Many were found at Machu Picchu. Many were found around Cusco and Lake Titicaca, etc. And so that's it'll give me a good opportunity as well to do some more 4K filming, to produce more videos for you of new information. And so just one more time, I'll put in the I'll put here the link to the GoFundMe campaign. If you can afford to contribute to it, I'll very much appreciate it. I do need to collect at least $3,000 though, because I can't finance the whole thing from myself. It's too much to ask for. But for those of you that are very much interested and can afford to do a little donation, then I will very much appreciate that. And those who donate, I'll probably write a little ebook about the results of these two skulls, and I'll try to send that out after the campaign's finished to all of those that have contributed. And I will also, of course, make YouTube videos as regards the results for the general public. But of course, the people who can donate will get more detail. Anyway, we'll be starting our tour on the 7th. And so this is Brian Forster in Paracas on the coast of Peru. I have about 5 minutes if anybody has any questions. Yes, I have seen photos. I have seen photos from Russia of so-called megaliths, but I've sent those photos to geologists, and they say they're likely natural formations. So I think real megalithic human or other manipulated structures are best seen in Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Greece, and we're going to Turkey in September 2019 to look at the underground cities and Göbekli Tepe, etc. Oh, okay, thoughts on the ground sink in Cusco? It's actually not in Cusco, it's in the Cusco area. What you have to understand is that the entire Cusco area is volcanic, ancient volcanic. And so there are a lot of villages built on volcanic ash. And if they get torrential rains, then they can have sinkholes and things happen, or at least the ground can partially sink. Okay, how do you relate the DNA to the blood factors? Well, that's another good point that I brought up yesterday. And that is that, again, when you're talking about ancient Peruvian people, pre-Hispanic people, again, you're only seeing 4 different haplogroups, A, B, C, or D. And as you've seen, only 2 of the 18 Paracas skulls tested had B, no A, no C, no D. We have what looks like a relationship to ancient people. Also, the largest elongated skulls in the world have been found here in Paracas and in the Black Sea area. I'm working with 5 different investigators in Russia right now who are collecting information for me. So in terms of the blood data, 100% of ancient Peruvians, and in fact, ancient indigenous people from Mexico all the way down to Patagonia and the southern point of South America, any that have been tested were all blood type O, 100%. But 14 samples of the Paracas were done about 40 years ago. A paper was published that was immediately withdrawn because other academics didn't want that shown to the world. But I got a copy of the results. And of the 14 samples taken from ancient textiles of the Paracas, blood type O, 43%. Blood type A, 28.5%. Blood type B, 7.1%. Blood type AB, which is the rarest blood type on Earth, 21.4%, whereas in the general population, it's about 3%. So again, it's not simply that the DNA is different than what it's supposed to be, but also the blood groupings are very complex. So you're talking about a very heterogeneous people whose bloodlines came from different areas. Also, 5 of the 18 samples, the mitochondrial results that came back were unknown. So that means that they also had ancestry that has not been mapped. And supposedly every ethnic group on Earth has been genetically mapped. That was the great project of the DNA project of the human genome. So again, you see all of these anomalies. As far as I can tell, I'm really the only one studying this stuff because A, I'm a scientist, B, I live in Paracas, and I like to do this work by myself now. I used to do it with a group of people from California, but when the first DNA results came out and showed this Eurasian connection, they insisted that the DNA came from Europe or the Middle East, and that is not what the results say. So they're more of the idea that the Paracas are descended from the Nephilim, and the Nephilim were in the Middle East. This DNA shows Eurasia. So that's what I have to say. That's where I'm at the moment. I just wanted to update you onto what's going on with this work. Actually, I can also say 3 medical doctors, based on the fact that the foramen magnum, again, this is the model one. You see where this is the foramen magnum. This is where your vertebrae enter the bottom of the skull. In a normal human skull, it's located here. So genetically, it's back by 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. That is not the result of head binding or cranial deformation. That is genetics. It's actually also smaller than normal. So it's theorized that the Paracas had longer and thinner necks than we do. So these medical doctors stated quite emphatically that the Paracas were not Homo sapiens sapiens. At very minimum, they were Homo sapiens sapiens Paracas, but it might very well turn out that they are much more exotic than that. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go leap from human to off-world people, but who knows? We only have preliminary results, but we do have from 18 so far. Once these other 2 are tested, that will make 20 that have been tested. And the Paracas have not been DNA tested prior to this time, just due to lack of interest, because the Paracas are a very strange culture to archaeologists. They can't explain why a civilization suddenly appears on the coast, the desert coast of Peru, 3,000 years ago. They're just not interested. They like studying the textiles, but they don't want to study the elongated heads. So this, again, for me, is an ongoing process. And I once again thank you for joining in. And finally, whoops, here is the link to the GoFundMe campaign. And I hope that some of you can assist in this process, because all of this information belongs to humanity in general. It doesn't belong just to a small group of academics. And of course, the reason why I have my YouTube channel is to share what I learn, because most people will never come to Peru. Some because financially it's not possible. Others because possibly they're not well enough to get on a plane. So that's the main function of my YouTube channel. And I will get back to you. I'll be doing lots of live video once I get to Cusco, starting on the 5th of this month. And with that, again, thanks to all of you. Please share this video if you've enjoyed it, and keep subscribe to my channel. And who is paying me? I make my money from selling books and also from my tours. I'm self-financing. So thank you very much, and please share this video with others if you enjoyed it. Goodbye from Paracas.